just when you thought it was safe to go out to the opera, to Broadway or something like that, now you're hearing that, now you're getting trigger warnings at the Metropolitan Opera. I mean, wow. I mean, this is, it's amazing that you hear situations like this. And, my wife, she is a mezzo-soprano, and she's been telling me the story of Turandot, this masterpiece by Puccini. And it's a story that takes place in ancient China. And the thing is that this particular opera has been done for about 100 years now. So now you have those, and it's been pushed at the Metropolitan Opera. They've put a trigger warning on this masterpiece. And we're going to read this this is directly from the New York Post. John Levine has written this. The New York City Metropolitan Opera puts a trigger warning on Puccini's masterpiece Turandot in bow to woke culture. They're striking a chord with the woke crowd. New York City's famed Metropolitan Opera adds a website trigger warning for prospective ticket buyers to Giacomo Puccini's Turandot. Inform audiences that the 1926 masterpiece set in ancient China could be offensive. It is riled with contradictions, distortions, and racial stereotypes, reads a programming note promising a discussion of the opera's cultural insensitivities. It shouldn't be surprising that many audience members of the Chinese descent find it difficult to watch, as their own heritage is co-opted, fetishized, or painted as savage, bloodthirsty, or backward, the note continues. The opera opens February 28th and will run through June 7th at Lincoln Center, with tickets in the parterre balcony going for $500. It tells the story of a brutal man-hating princess, Turandot. Anyone seeking her hand in marriage must answer 3 riddles and put to death if they fail. Eventually, one suitor, Caliph, is triumphant, but not before many twists and travails. The Met website calls the 3-hour, 20-minute show a problematic masterpiece. I mean, this is the shit that keeps going on. This is a story. This is an ancient story that's supposedly based on history of China. And it is ridiculous that, they say, well, it's problematic, just because we've done it in an opera, and, we don't have that many Chinese people in there. It is ridiculous. It's storytelling. Let's continue on with this article. I've never heard of any such warning on any opera ever. Tahar Hassan, 88, a soprano who has performed at the Met and played Turandot herself in the 1980s. The Met has become very sensitive to many things, Hassan, who still works as a voice coach in Manhattan, added. Norman Lebrecht, a critic and owner of the influential music blog Slip dismissed the program note as manufactured racial exasperation. Trigger warnings exist to cover the heightened legal anxieties of theater administrators and the lately inflated sensitivities of underpaid auxiliaries. They are bad for business and they should be scrapped, he said. Turandot has fictional Chinese characters. If that bothers you, stay away, he added. Turandot's Puccini's last work is one of the opera's world's most regularly performed war horses, featuring the iconic aria Nessun Dorma, among other memorable numbers. It was first performed in the Met in 1926. The current revival was created by Italian director Franco Zeffirelli and has been performed in more than 200 times at the Met since its premiere in 1987. The Met website boasts of a preview review of its original debut, calling it a big, eye-catching, densely packed, omnipotent new production. Phoebe Yang, a generative AI researcher who is Chinese and saw the show last week, said she was unbothered by the opera. There you go. You know, personally, I agree with most of the opinions in that note. For audiences born or raised in China, racial stereotypes in Turandot are easily noticeable, but I think trace it back to the time of Turandot was created, and all of this becomes understandable, she said. After the death of George Floyd, the Met took a decisively woke turn, vowing to reorient itself into an anti-racial organization that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive. DEI. DEI is as racist as it comes. You have to understand to the situation. People, when they make these stories like Puccini and many others, they are storytellers. They're telling a story, Let's move on. A chief diversity officer position was created, and an anti-racism training was mandated for senior managers. Alongside Verdi and Puccini, the Met now features an opera about the life of a Malcolm X and another based audio biography of Charles Bow, a progressive New York Times columnist. Under the leadership of Peter Gell, the Met's general manager, the organization has faced financial crisis. One of the reasons why, what I just read, and has been repeatedly forced to tap its endowment to cover operating expenses. The curators of our great traditions are betraying the legacy that is their privilege to oversee in order to virtual signal on the matters of race and identity, said Heather McDonald, a cultural critic at the Manhattan Institute and frequent Met attendee. At some point, all of opera is going to be in an extremely precarious position because it comes from a different world, a different set of sensibilities, and the narratives are traditional. The Met did not respond for the request from the comment from the New York Post. And this is the situation. They want to create DEI operas, DEI, on there. They can't. The reason is, you tell them, it says, listen, if you don't like these stories that have been around for 100 years or so, if you don't like Puccini, you don't like Verdi, you don't like Shakespeare, you don't like any of these stuff, go make it yourself. And the thing about it is, it doesn't work out too well. It doesn't work out too well. You already see this from Hollywood. You see Hollywood is just literally in flames. They are just crashing in flames for this DEI situation. Already this week we had the gaming situation. They want to call it Gamergate 2 to that point. But when you look at it, and from a gamer point of view, I haven't picked up a game in a while because I haven't seen anything that I liked. Any of the AAA games that are out there, they haven't been that good. And the same thing that has happened at the Met Opera. The Met Opera continues to change these operas. They try to make it one of the worst things, as someone who listens to opera and have seen a play or two. They try to put some of these stories in a made for the modern era sense, and this is not recent. This has been happening well back into the 80s. You've seen stories where basically they've taken it to Harlem, to the situation, and when you hear, I forgot which opera it was, and it had to deal, the section of it had to deal with a feast that was supposedly in the opera. The way they reinterpreted it into a more 20th century Harlem is that they're sitting on a stoop eating chicken McNuggets from McDonald's. And they're talking about the meal itself, because like I said, I forgot which one it was, and they're talking about what a fine pheasant that this is. The meal is fantastic, and the guy's holding up a chicken McNugget. You can't get more insane than this. This is the reason why we can't get young people back into music. Here on Staten Island in New York, we have a conservatory over at It's the Staten Island Conservatory. It's over at Snug Harbor, and they teach young people the music. They're teaching them to sing. My wife itself has had one or two teachers there as she practice her singing on she does this on a constant basis to keep herself well in tune. She happens to be a fantastic singer. And the thing is that, we're trying to teach a next generation to keep these stories going. But the thing about it is, there are those out there, they're like, oh, it's not diverse. It's not, it's very racial and stuff like that. But these are stories from many years ago. And it's the same thing that recently you've heard the article, and I want to discuss about that came out talking about Shogun. That why aren't there any black people in Shogun? I mean, okay, there's a story of one black man, which was in the late 1400s. He wasn't there that long, and he would be long dead at this point from when this story takes off. But this is not a story about other countries. This is a story about Japan itself, and a story about a man who comes to Japan and becomes a permanent prisoner. If you don't know the story of Shogun, Blackthorn is actually, it's based on an actual an Englishman who came to Japan and could not leave. But he became popular with certain Japanese leaders at that point, given a high mark in there, given a home, but still, he could not go back to England. He could never go back to England. And people, they said, well, you're black blood. I heard that when I heard the terminology black blood, they said there's no black blood here. It makes me think of the episode of MASH where the guy was sitting there and was telling Hawkeye that, oh, make sure I get the right blood. When I hear that terminology in there, that's what it's making me think. But see, the thing is that these are stories. Now, whether someone Chinese is in the story or whether or not, in an opera situation, you're limited to the cast that you have, and you say, well, we need to find more. But you need to train people to the situation. There are certain things, like in the opera profession, not everyone can do ballet, not everyone can do opera, and I've said this before. It is a very tough, business to be in. It's not like being an actor or an actress, and even an actor and an actress, not everyone can be the one. And when you have to substitute a role to someone who isn't from that country, you look for the best person possible to sing that role. And the thing about it is, there are Asians in opera, there are Africans in opera, and there are many, Italians, Greeks, it's as diverse as you can get. But they're going to tell you, the politicians, the critics of people who probably have never seen an opera in their entire life, they're going to tell you that, oh, we can't have this. We can't have this. So shame on the Met Opera for bending the knee on this. So, tell me in the comments below your thoughts about this. Now we got to deal with the Metropolitan Opera, when you go out. I mean, what's next? They're going to have woke warnings on your dinner plate. I expect it on a Broadway show eventually down the line. If it hasn't started yet, it probably has on there. Or a particular thing. One thing about when you come to New York City, you can find any classification of show of many different nationalities. And that's what's great. One of the great things about New York. You could, around the corner from where I used to live, where my mother lives now, happens to be a Spanish theater there. It's a small theater, and it shows many great shows there, and on a constant basis. And there are many different theaters throughout. You have dance theaters by black and African. culture, you have Hispanic, you have Asian. There are many things you could find here in New York City when it comes to shows. That's why we have Broadway and we have off-Broadway. I remember a show called Robot Caveman that I went to Brooklyn to see, and I thought, very tiny theater, only about 50 people in the audience, and it was right there, right in front of you. I mean, this is not something where you're at a distance. The show was right, literally in front of you, and I had fun. I love to see that, and that's the thing. There's plenty of it here, but we're losing a lot of it because of this DEI bullshit. So tell me in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts about this. Remember to share this video, hit the like, and hopefully today's the day I've earned your subscription. So until next time, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you on the next video. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for watching, commenting, and sharing this video. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe, as this helps the reach of this channel. Finally, as a content viewer, you have the ability to help support this channel, as new internet laws around the world will diminish our reach and affect our sponsors. If you choose to help, there are two ways listed in the description below. The first link will lead you to a pay site where you can make a monetary donation. The second will lead you to our gear shop where you can buy shirts, mugs, and other gear. Discounts will be listed on the site. Once again, thank you for watching and your support.